So let's simplify square root of 54. The easiest way, or at least the simplest way to teach this, is we're going to look for prime numbers. So prime numbers are going to be the numbers that you cannot multiply two things together and get except for that number. So for example, 2 is a prime number because 1 times 2 makes 2 and nothing else does without going into fractions or something like that. So it's 3, 5, 7, 9 is not, because 3 times 3 would be 9, 11, 13, it's probably not going to go more than 13, but then be like 17. So I'm looking for these numbers. So to simplify this radical, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break 54 down into prime factorizations. I'm going to break it down into these numbers. So in my head I just have to go, okay, what two things can I multiply together to get 54? You can start multiplying things together. You can divide 54 by a number. So for example, if I divide 54 by 2, that would be 2 times 27. Right, that actually multiplies, so those are good, and 2 is one of my prime numbers, so I'm going to circle it. It's done. 27, however, not a prime number. So if I try to divide 27 by 2, it won't do it. It's an odd number, you can't divide it by 2. So then I would go up. Alright, let me see if I can divide it by 3. Well, I can't, because 3 times 9 is 27. 3 is one of my prime numbers, so I'm going to circle it. 9 is not a prime number, so I got to keep breaking it down. So I have to come up with what two numbers can I multiply to make 9. Well, 2 times nothing will make 9. 3 times 3 will make 9. And both those are prime numbers. Okay, so here's my prime factorization. 2, 3, 3, and 3. So I'm going to write those down. 2, 3, actually let's do it with times. So there's the 2, there's the 3, and the 3. So if I multiply 2 times 3 times 3 times 3, I'm going to get 54. So this is actually 54 broken down. So this right here is the exact same thing as the square root of 54. It's just broken down into its prime numbers. Anytime I have a pair, so two matching ones, like 3 times 3, I can actually take it and bring it outside the square root. But for each pair, so I only write one of them, so this 3 comes out here to the front. So for each pair, I write one of them outside. The 2 times the 3, well, those aren't the same, they don't have a pair, so that's going to stay. If I multiply these back together, I get 6. So this is my simplified radical. 3 square root of 6 is the exact same thing as 54. I don't know on the TSI if you get to use a calculator or not. I don't think you do. But if you do, you can put this in the calculator and this in the calculator, and they will give you the exact same numbers. Let's say you had a radical, a square root, that has a number and variables in it. So let's say x to the 4th, y to the 3rd. You break down the number just like we did before. So I'm not even going to look at the x's and y's just yet. I'm going to take the 48 and start breaking it down. I'm going to start with 2. Well, 2 times something give me 48. Well, yeah, 2 times 24 will. 2 is one of those prime numbers, so I'm going to circle it. 24 isn't a prime number, so I have to keep breaking that down. I'm going to do 2 again, because 2 times 12 will make 24. 2's prime, I circle it. 12 can be broken down into 2 times 6. Circle the 2 because it's prime. Keep breaking down the 6. That is 2 times 3. Those are both prime, so I circle. So I'm going to rewrite the square root of 48x to the 4th, y to the 3rd in its prime factorization form. So the 48 is 2, 2, 2, 2, and 3. Now for the variables, all I do is look at the exponent. That's x to the fourth. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 x's. Y to the third, that's 1, 2, 3 y's. Then all we have to do is pick out our pairs, numbers that match. So I have a 2 and a 2 right here. So that 2 is going to come outside the square root. I have another 2 and a 2, so I'm going to pull out a 2 for that pair. The 3, there are no more 3's anywhere in there, so I'm not going to pull out a 3. I have a pair of x's, another pair of x's, and a pair of y's. So for each pair, there's the 2, there's the 2, there's the x, there's the x, there's the y's. Those all come out in front of the radical. What I have left is a 3 and a y. We take everything that's outside the radical, the square root sign, and we multiply it together. So 2 times 2 would be 4. X times x would be x squared. And then y, there's nothing to combine with, that's just y. Underneath the square root will be 3 times y, and that's just 3y. And so there is my simplified radical. So the square root of 48, x to the fourth, y to the third, will simplify down into 4x squared y, square root of 3y. If you have a radical and it has a number out front, so let's say we had 2x and then square root of, let's do 32 x to the fifth. Don't worry about this 2x in front. It's going to stay in front. We're going to treat this just like we did all the others. I'm going to take the 32 and break it down. So what two numbers can I multiply and make 32? 2 times 16, 2's prime. 16 isn't, so we're going to keep breaking 16 down. I can do 2 times 8, 2 times 4, 2 times 2. Right? There's all my prime factors. So I'm going to rewrite this radical. The 2x, haven't messed with, it's going to stay in front. Underneath this square root, though, we're going to put our prime factorization of 32, which is going to be 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. And again, if you're to make sure you didn't miss something, especially on big numbers, you can multiply all these back together. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. And then x, because it's fifth power, there's going to be 5 of them. Now, when I go to pull out my pairs, there's already a 2 and an x out front. So those are going to stay in front. So this 2 is already here. I'm just going to bring this one down. I'm going to wait on the x so I have all my numbers together. I have a pair of 2's. I'm going to take that pair of 2 out, and it goes right here. I have another pair of 2's. I'm going to take a 2 out for that one. It goes right there. Alright, I have this 2, but there's no other 2 to pair with it, so it's just going to stay. Now I'm going to bring down this x and start pulling out my pairs of x's. So there's one, there's another one, and that one doesn't have a pair, so it's going to stay. So I write my square root. Whatever is left, that's a 2 and an x, stays. Everything gets multiplied back together now. So 2 times 2 times 2, so that would be 8. 1, 2, 3 would be x to the third. And then 2 times x is just 2x. So there is my simplified square root from 2x, 32x to the fifth power, to 8x to the third times the square root of 2x. The only other thing I can think they might do with simplifying square roots is ask you to add two expressions together. To add these two together, the square roots have to match, and these don't. This is an 8x to the third, and that's a 18x. So what you have to do is simplify this one and simplify this one, and then they should come out to match, and then you can add them together. Same thing goes for subtraction. You would just subtract instead of add. So I'm going to take this 8 and break it down. 8 would be 2 times 4, 2 is prime, and then 4 would be 2 times 2, and then that's all my primes. So I'm going to do the same thing over here with 18. So 18 would be 2 times 9. 2 is prime, 9 is not. That's 3 and 3. Okay, then I'm going to rewrite these as they're like prime factorized square roots. So I'm going to take the 2, stays where it is, square root, and I've got 3 2's. And then because it's x to the third, I've got 3 x's. Plus 3x stays out front. I've got a 2, 2 3's, and then 1x. I'm going to go through, pick out my pairs. So this 2 is in front, stays. I have a pair of 2's. That 2 is not. There's a pair of x's. And then what is left underneath is a 2 and an x. Over here we have a 3 out front. I also have a pair of 3's right here, so I can bring that out. The 2 does and the x doesn't, so this x is going to stay right here, and then underneath the square root is going to be a 2 and an x. If I multiply these back together, so 2 times 2 is 4x square root of 2x, plus 3 times 3 is 9x square root 2x. So now you notice square root of 2x, square root of 2x. So since we did all the simplifying, these match and you can now add them together. When you add them, you add the numbers in front of the square root. So I add 4x plus 9x, which makes 13x. And then the 2 radicals just stay. So it was square root of 2x, it will be square root of 2x. So here is my simplified form. We started with these two, you had to simplify them, and then you could add them together.